Hello and welcome to the show. Now, I am a rather large fan of the super saloons. I like them because of the craziness. I've always liked cars, like the Clio V6, for example. Absolutely bonkers vehicle, and super saloons are kind of my sort of crazy. These four-door cars often can have performance figures that'll rival the likes of supercars. This Dodge Charger Hellcat, 707 horsepower. That's a lot. That's a hell of a lot of horsepower in a four-door saloon car, in a production four-door saloon car. It's more power than a Ferrari 488. And there's certainly not a shortage of these around. Everything from BMW's M division, the AMG division of Mercedes, you have the Audi RS cars, and there's plenty of other wild cards as well to throw into the mix. There is a lot of competition between these vehicles. So, naturally, I wanted to find out how the Charger would do compared against this rather busy market. We would start off with a race at the Road Atlanta circuit. Now, the four-wheel drive cars would get off the line really rather quickly. This Mercedes and Tesla making very, very quick work of getting up the field three wide into turn one. Poor Lexus gets stuck on the outside with very little in the way of space to go. The Mercedes had got himself up into second place by the time they reached the top of the hill. The Chrysler 300C, always likely to be a little bit outclassed in this field, would start dropping back. The Chevrolet Supersport at the front, perhaps, in fact it is the least powerful car in this field with 415 horsepower, actually made a pretty good getaway. Again, we knew the Supersport was going to get outclassed by some of these other vehicles, but it held on relatively well. Once again, we were using the reverse PI order, so the fastest cars would have to make their way through the field. Four-wheel drive cars, though, make such short work of everybody off the line. As you can see, the Mercedes, the Tesla, one of the Audis was right up there very, very early on. As we come onto the back straight, the Chevy could hold its own through the corners, but it was going to get mullered down the straight by the Mercedes and the Tesla. The Tesla's almost got 700 horsepower in that. It does absolutely fly, and the Tesla's real strong point is getting off the turns very, very quickly. Four-wheel drive and electric power, being able to sort of deploy all of its power immediately in the Tesla makes it very quick off the turns, but it is heavy, a very heavy car here, almost 5,000 pounds, which means that through the corners it can struggle a little bit, and the Mercedes would hold on to the lead through the chicane. The Tesla was having a look as they come towards the final turn, but it wasn't quite in the right place. I was driving the Hellcat and having some issues on this opening lap. I kind of got stuck a little bit in traffic. The Hellcat has many horsepower, not as much problem as the Gibble that goes for a little bit of an Explorer in the background. And the Hellcat has many of the powers and an awful lot of wheel spin when you try and get it off the line. It also has the worst diff I have ever driven in a modern car. It just spins one wheel constantly. I don't know what they were thinking when they put the diff in this car. So yeah, getting off the line was pretty poor, and I got a little bit held up behind these pair of cars through the twistier sections. Of course, as soon as you get on the straight, the Hellcat is gone. Just absolutely gone, but it could get held up in traffic if you caught cars at the wrong point through corners. One of the vehicles that was making their way through the field, the Infiniti Q50 Eau Rouge, the highest PI car, actually a joint highest PI car here between the Infiniti and the Audi RS6 Avant. The Infiniti, a pretty damn good car, this one. We were expecting it to be fast. Didn't quite have as blistering start as the Mercedes and the Tesla, but didn't take long for him to find his way up into third, getting past the Audi RS7. RS7 tries fighting back on the exit of turn one. Doesn't quite have the speed, really, to match the Q50 on the way up the top of the hill, and the Infiniti would take the position and would have to now go and try and chase down the Tesla and Mercedes ahead. The Chevy was gradually dropping back through the field, much as we expected. However, it was holding its own. It was putting up a fight against a Lexus ISF. The ISF has one more horsepower than the Chevy, but considerably higher PI. You'd expect it to be a bit better through the corners, but it was having a pretty tough time, actually, finding a way past the Supersport. If the Supersport had a lot more power, I think it could be a serious contender. It is a little bit underpowered in this field, especially when you've got a Hellcat coming behind you that should absolutely breezes past these two vehicles and will continue to fly down the straight, catching up. The ISF, though, really wasn't pulling very much on the Chevy. Gradually, just about to get to the end of the straight, then the Lexus starts to gain as we come to the chicane. Lexus is on the outside for the first part, if you can hold your car there, which the Lexus can. The Lexus ISF is a damn good handling car as well. You'll get to the inside for the second part, and the ISF can get the move done on the Chevy, but certainly the Supersport wasn't falling through the field anywhere near as quickly as the likes of the Chrysler and the Maserati. It was holding on pretty damn well. I was very impressed. The Audi RS6 got a little bit unfortunate at the start, made a mistake at the top of the hill and dropped back through the order, so he was on a recovery drive as the Jaguar up ahead gets all sorts of crossed up coming down the fast corners. The RS6 was another vehicle. When I drove it, I was really impressed. This thing handles so well. It's probably the longest car in this field. It's a giant vehicle. My God, does it take corners incredibly well. You haven't got the horrendous four-wheel drive understeer that you get from some of the other vehicles. You know, it is a huge vehicle, but it doesn't feel like it's a large, heavy four-wheel drive car. It handles really well, brakes pretty damn well. Also, he gets a move done on the Jaguar. Has some half-decent straight-line speed. Certainly not the fastest vehicle down this back straight when compared to the Hellcat, but it will pull on the Chevy Supersport as they run towards the chicane. The Audi can get past around the outside. That's quite a scary kink sometimes. All of these vehicles were just about well enough planted on the road to make it flat out. At times that can be quite scary. That got a little hill. Jaguar was going to follow through as well, making the move stick and managing to just out-accelerate the Chevy as they came over the crest of that hill down towards the final corner. The Jaguar made a relatively simple pass. Jaguar was another one struggling with a terrible diff. Back towards the front of the race, third place was almost changing hands. Tesla made a little mistake, ran wide. It's quite easy to do that with the Tesla. Very large, very heavy, quite understeery at times. The M5 was no real match, though, for the Tesla's straight line speed, and it's the way the Tesla gets off the corner that is the most impressive, and none of them were a match for the Hellcat as we come down towards the chicane. BMW had a wheel on the grass, had a big wiggle in the braking zone, gets it stopped, but then takes too tighter a line, goes across the grass a little bit, gets a kick of oversteer, and is not going to match that Hellcat's acceleration as we come down towards the final turn. The M5 actually quite well, relatively low PI. It's in B class, relatively high B class, but still was again holding on pretty well to the front cars. The RS6 continued his progress through the field, catching up to the back of the Lexus ISF. Has a look around the outside of turn 1. That is a pretty tough maneuver to make sick, and this track certainly through some places can be a little bit of a harder one to overtake on. At the start I got held up with traffic for the opening the lap and a half and so on, just because there's such fast corners around here. At times it can be a little bit awkward as the Audi and Lexus go door to door, the tiniest of nudges, but the Lexus really was pushing the car incredibly hard to try and keep this Audi behind. The RS6 is a very good vehicle as we come up towards the top of the course. In the end, the RS6 can simply out-drag the Lexus down there to get the position. Now, the ISF is, considering it's the oldest car here, it's a pretty good handling car through the corner. I think it's a great vehicle, but yeah, didn't have the power to compete with the rest of these cars in a straight line. At the front, and it was the Mercedes, the E63 AMG, that would go on to take victory. Having got to the lead early on with a good start, managed to pull a gap back to the rest of the field. The Infiniti stayed relatively close, and lap times between the Mercedes and the Infiniti were incredibly similar. Third place was up for grabs on the final lap. My Hellcat had caught the back of the Tesla. I was putting him under increasing pressure as the Tesla runs a tad wide through the chicane. But that four-wheel drive traction and the way the Tesla launches off the corner is so impressive. I couldn't quite do anything down towards the final corner. The Tesla would take third, my Hellcat fourth, the M5 coming home in fifth. The RS6 would make it up to sixth. The Hellcat also set a very similar lap time to the Mercedes and the Infiniti around this track, making up most of its time down the long straight. At the tail end of the field, the Gibble did struggle. The poor Maserati, the Chrysler up ahead had a fairly large off on the final lap, and even then has a sizable margin back to the Maserati. It wasn't quick. As much as I love the car, it was utterly outclassed around here. So we move on to our second challenge. I didn't just want to do another race. See, half the fun of these super saloons is that they can put the frighteners on sports cars and supercars, so I arranged a slightly different challenge. Each car would have to try and survive 2 laps around the Silverstone International Circuit while being hunted down by a Mercedes AMG GTS. the Saloons would get a 3-second head start, and we were going to see which car could survive longest around the track before being overtaken, or if any of them could indeed survive the 2 laps. The Chrysler was always likely to struggle around here, let's be honest. These cars are at the lower end of B class. The Mercedes is a mid-A class car, and sure enough, it did not take long for the AMG to find a way past. Interestingly, straight line speed, the Chrysler was really not that far behind the Mercedes, but yeah, it didn't take too long for the Mercedes to get past. Surprisingly, the Maserati did fare better than the Chrysler. I think the four-wheel drive launch off of the line as we were doing a standing start for this may have helped just get the Maserati slightly further around. It was still, though, not long, and yeah, the Mercedes absolutely mullers the poor Gibble in a straight line. The Lexus was the next to fall, and all of these early cars were going at a fairly similar point as we come onto the straight. The Lexus did struggle a little bit with straight line speed as well, and sure enough, that was the AMG finding a way past. I think the Mercedes may well have had a wheel on the grass finding its way past, but it would do. Lexus keeps up a bit better than the poor Gibble did, but still, you know, nothing that you can really do, and then the AMG will corner better. The Chevy Supersport put up a very, very impressive performance. As I said from the first race, this is a damn good car, and it really did show it. I was trying to defend my way onto the straight, and despite being the least powerful vehicle here, the Chevy does do quite well with its horsepower. It's very close between the Chevy and the Lexus. The Chevy just holds on for a little bit longer, a little bit better acceleration than the Lexus on to this back straight. Yeah, and a very impressive performance from the Supersport. Up next, it was the Jaguar, the XF RS, 550 horsepower in this car. It is a pretty damn powerful vehicle, let down by a horrendous differential. It just wants to spin one wheel. It's really not a particularly nice vehicle to drive. This one would remain further ahead of the AMG as we head down the back straight. The Mercedes was very, very gradually catching, but it wasn't by very much, which meant that I would have to be defending my way through this next corner. The GTS could carry so much more speed, though, through that turn, and it was significantly better under brakes. I was trying to get my car stopped and be neat and kind of defend the inside. It wasn't going to matter, though. The Mercedes was so much better under braking and could carry so much more quarter speed than the Jag that it would get past me on the outside. The M5, again, another car that had impressed in the opening race, was to go next, keeping a quite solid gap back to the Mercedes as we came down the straight for the first time. The AMG was always likely to close through the corner, so I had to have as large a gap as I could down this section. Again, going defensive with the BMW. Not as easy for the Mercedes this time around, but still capable of holding it around the outside. That puts them on the inside for the next part. I couldn't get the BMW far enough across to defend for the final sort of turn. Always going to be a sitting duck for the Mercedes at that part of the course. Now, the Hellcat, well, it was never likely going to enjoy the twisty sections, and sure enough, the Mercedes was right on its bumper as we come down the straight. But then we have the Charger's power. That 707 horsepower will fire it away from the Mercedes. Pulls a fairly sizable gap by the time we get to the end of the straight. But then we've got some more corners. The brakes on the Hellcat are very, very good, but it just lacks corner grip, and the diff is horrendous. So, yeah, it was very much a cling on for dear life with the Hellcat. I was fractionally further ahead, and I could get my vehicle across to the inside for the final turn to try and defend because of the acceleration of the Hellcat. I could pull away briefly from the Mercedes down towards that final little corners, but it was still no good for the Dodge. The Mercedes drove clean around the outside of me. The Audi RS7 would go next. As you can see, a larger visible gap had appeared to the Mercedes. He was not close enough to have a go into the chicane, which was, yeah, first it was looking like the RS7 might be the first vehicle to hold on for an entire lap. Again, having to defend a little bit around the final corner. Mercedes didn't quite have anywhere to go, and the Audi would hold on for a lap. Just about. Mercedes can get himself to the inside down towards turn 1. It out-accelerates the Audi, so there's nothing that I could do. I couldn't get my car across in time to defend, so the Mercedes would get the Audi on the run into the first corner. Tesla was the next vehicle to fall again. A little smaller margin back to the Mercedes than we had with the Audi. The problem with the Tesla, while it's got amazing launch off the turn and very good initial acceleration, it is a heavy car and it does struggle a little bit through these tighter sections. I was again just sort of placing the Tesla, making it as awkward as I could for the Mercedes, but it's an exact same maneuver from the AMG. Gets himself to the inside on the run towards turn 1. The Tesla holds on a brief bit longer than the Audi managed to. Unfortunately, I lost the replay for the Mercedes. Mercedes, the E63 did a very similar thing, only the AMG went around the outside into turn 1. So the E63 did beat the Tesla. All three of those cars, though, all fell at the same corner. The E63 did slightly better. We're only talking a few meters on the track. The RS6 would survive the first lap without the GTS getting alongside. As I said, this RS6 is a bloody good driving car. Nice brakes on it. Really rather good turning. Doesn't feel like a large estate car, certainly, although it was always going to be a matter of time where the Mercedes would have a look. Again, having to be a little bit defensive down here, and the Mercedes has just got so much grip that he can get his car around the outside. Again, I'm trying to hug the inside, make it as difficult as possible for the GTS to find a way past. Doesn't matter, even with him bouncing his way around the outside, the AMG has got the straight line speed to pass the Audi. The Audi's not slow in a straight line, but the Mercedes had just enough to out-accelerate. The RS6 held on, but it wasn't quite enough. It did pretty damn respectably, though. However, our victor in this challenge would be the Infiniti. The Q50 Eau Rouge would take victory as we rounded the final corner to start our second lap. Mercedes was closer on this opening one. I think the slight difference between the Infiniti and the RS6 is the Infiniti is that bit quicker accelerating, and it's that little bit easier to defend with the Infiniti in a way that you can't quite do with the RS6. The Infiniti is a good handling car as well. It does feel a bit more understeery than the RS6, but yeah, it is a pretty damn good handling vehicle. So the Mercedes is trying exactly the same maneuver that it tried to pull on the Audi, but it can't quite keep as far alongside the Q50 as it could with the Audi. Now we come down this back straight, and the Mercedes doesn't breeze past it. The Mercedes doesn't have the straight line speed advantage. The Infiniti has enough speed to keep himself in the lead. However, as we come at the end of the straight, no matter how much I defend on the inside, it's not going to matter because the GTS will drive all the way around the outside with its superior corner grip. Yeah, the Q50 may be able to keep up acceleration-wise with the GTS, but it can't out-corner it, so none of the vehicles managed to survive 2 laps being hunted. But it was good fun. It was a good fun challenge to do. So, after the first 2 rounds, well, it went to a more traditional hot lapping session at the Top Gear test track, and it was another victory for the Q50 with a 117.9. These were all done with flying laps. It takes actually only about 0.4 of a second from the RS6. RS6 was an impressive car. I really liked the way that it drove. Wasn't expecting it to be anywhere near as good as it was, but yeah, I think the RS6 probably my favourite of the cars, kind of handling-wise. Really good vehicle to go racing. The Tesla would take third, just beating out the Charger Hellcat that in turn just bits out the E63 AMG. All very close in there, 19.3, 2 19.3s and 19.4. Very, very close section of the table. The Tesla has the initial acceleration, but a bit wobbly through the corners. The Hellcat has brutal straight line speed, a bit scary through the turns. The Mercedes, a better composed car overall, although doesn't quite have these. A little bit heavy, it just doesn't quite feel as good through the turns. The M5 is not far off either, despite being a fair way down on PI. Lovely car to drive. Not my favourite kind of generation of M5, but a damn good car nevertheless. The RS7 just gets under the 120s. Jaguar XF-RS beats out the Lexus ISF. The Chevy Supersport, not far off the Lexus either around here. The Chrysler 300C does manage to beat the poor old Gibble down at the bottom. Yeah, fairly large spread when you get towards the bottom of the table there, but yeah, it was kind of a little bit as expected, but the RS6 did fare very, very well. On to the drag race portion. The Audi's launching very quickly. The RS6 gets an absolutely mighty start as it flies away. This RS7, fairly good launch, but would gradually get swallowed up by the faster cars as the Hellcat that struggles off the line flies after the leading group as they cross the line. Just not quite enough time for the poor Hellcat. The Tesla, well, we'd expect the Tesla to be fast. It hasn't got the launch, though, of the RS6. That Audi absolutely flies off of the line, pulls a huge lead. The Tesla does start coming back. The RS6 actually runs out of steam. Towards the end of the race, the Tesla was catching and then can't do anything. The RS6 begins pulling away. The Hellcat is coming very, very quickly at the end of the race. The problem is, the poor Charger just can't get the car off the line. It is a real pain in the arse getting the Dodge going. Of course, none of the vehicles here are being raced with assist. So yeah, you've really got to watch that wheel spin. I didn't do a perfect job on this one. I think I could have done slightly better for the poor Dodge. It is absolutely flying at the end. We passed the Mercedes, but we run out of time to catch the Q50. Certainly the fastest car here at a straight line, the Hellcat. But when we've got sort of a drag race situation, it does struggle off the line. I mean, the Jag beats it off the line for a little while. Okay, yeah, the Hellcat's power soon kicks in. Yeah, the Jaguar, these kind of the little, the slower vehicle, almost like the secondary class in this in some ways. The Chevy Supersport actually held on for the first probably quarter of a mile. The Chevy would beat the Jag, and considering how far down on power that Chevy is pretty damn impressive. And the Chrysler, despite an awful start, actually beats the Maserati as well. So to the kind of final results, the Audi RS6 would take victory in the drag race thanks to a mighty launch ahead of the Tesla. Very close between those two, though. The Q50 would come third ahead of the very quick catching Charger, let down by a poor start ahead of the Mercedes E63. The Audi RS7 would come mid-pack, followed by the BMW M5. As we saw, the Jaguar just beats out the Chevy Supersport, but considering it's almost 150 horsepower down on that Jag, pretty good showing from the Chevy. The Lexus ISF did struggle a little bit with the drag race. It is quite low on power as well. The Chrysler 300C has an abysmal start, but even then it manages to beat the poor Gibble. You know, that Gibble's four-wheel drive as well. The Maserati was not quick in a straight line at all. So, on to our final of the tests, 0 to 100 to 0. So we're not only testing the acceleration of the vehicle, but we've got to get the car stopped again as well. The BMW M5 would go first to set a benchmark. Not quite as likely to be impressive as the supercars and hypercar stuff that we have done. It's going to have longer, this challenge is going to sort of be longer down the runway, but still, they're pretty damn fast vehicles. The M5 beating the ISF. The Tesla, though, would set a rather tough to beat sort of benchmark back there. You know, we'd kind of expect that perhaps from the Tesla. That four-wheel drive and electric power launch is pretty damn phenomenal, but a lot of car to get slowed down. It is quite a heavy vehicle. The Jaguar would go next, gets stopped before the Lexus, but gets beaten by the M5, certainly not helped by the terrible diff and trying to get that Jag off the line. The Hellcat, though, would do something incredible, and something that nobody expected. It would beat the Tesla, though. No one was quite expecting the Hellcat to perform as well as it did. The RS6 did not quite get as mightier a launch. Perhaps a little bit more is expected from the RS6. Can't quite compete with the Tesla or the Hellcat. Q50 would go next and come to a stop, beating the RS6, but still a fair way off the Tesla and the Dodge. The Mercedes would remain very close with the Q50. Those two have been close in the drag race, were close again in this, sort of fairly similar performance figures essentially from those vehicles. The Maserati wasn't on the brakes yet until it had cleared pretty much all of the cars. The Gibble is not fast. Not fast at all in a straight line. He was long gone. The Chrysler does sometimes struggle getting a bit off the line, but even that well beats the Maserati. Our next vehicle firing down here, the Chevy Supersport, had been impressive and continued to impress. Beats the XFRS. That's pretty damn good going. It's not far off the M5. So yeah, it's a very respectable showing from the Chevy, and the Audi RS7 would finish it off. Its four-wheel drive launch, not quite enough though to get it slowed down before the M5. So, to have a look at the finishing positions, a mighty impressive showing from the Hellcat. If you get the launch right, which I did in this one, I got it absolutely spot on. The brakes are pretty damn powerful, and of course so much power will propel it up to 100 miles an hour very, very quickly. It does beat out the Tesla. The Tesla does well considering the amount of weight that thing's got to get slowed down. The Mercedes manages to beat the Infiniti. Is very close between the pair of them, though. Not quite the closest we've seen, but yeah, they'd been close in all the straight line speed stuff. You know, they were pretty pretty evenly matched. The RS6 is a little bit further down, a relatively large, heavy car as well, to get slowed down, perhaps why it struggled a teensy bit on this. The M5 does beat out the RS7. This is a relatively close little group. Apologies for the slightly laggy replay while the Chevy is showing up as having a lot of wheel spin. The Chevy, though, does beat the Jaguar, not by much. But, that Chevy is not far off the Audi RS7, a considerably more powerful four-wheel drive launching car. I'm very impressed with how well the Supersport was doing. The Lexus ISF, a little bit further down the road, just not quite powerful enough. The Chrysler gets poor launch, it struggles a little bit to get up to 100. Still, though, not that far off the Lexus. And then we kind of continue going a little bit. And still some more. Eventually, there it is, Maserati comes into sight. We actually run out of camera space, so this camera was selected on the M5. It's about the mid-mark in the field. We can't actually get the camera up to the gimbal. That's how far away it is from the rest of it. Not a problem I've had before when filming these. The poor Maserati was rather outclassed here. I love the car, but it wasn't quick in this lot. That is a fair... So I could probably get the Hellcat back up to 100 miles an hour by the time I got to where the Maserati finished. So, on to the overall results, and it is by far the closest showdown that we have done. However, the Infiniti would take victory ahead of the Tesla Model S. The Audi RS6 rounding out the podium, beating the Mercedes E63, and the Charger Hellcat would end up 5th. The M5 does narrowly beat out the Audi RS7. Admittedly, the RS7 did disconnect from the Road Atlanta race. Had it finished, it would have been very close between the RS7 and the M5, but I don't think the points would have actually changed. The XF RS does beat the Chevy Supersport, which in turn beats the Lexus ISF. A very good showing from the Chevy. And at the bottom, the Chrysler 300C does manage to beat out the poor Maserati down there. And Victor, though, the Infiniti Q50, definitely a very worthy victor. This car, an impressive handling vehicle. It doesn't quite have the straight line speed of the likes of the Hellcat. It doesn't quite have the launch that you saw from the RS6 or the Tesla Model S kind of speed over the turns. However, overall, it is the best package out there. It's very, very close. There are a lot of incredibly good cars in this showdown, and it is very close between them. However, overall, the Infiniti is just that little tiny bit better, just that little bit better through the corners, and got that little bit more acceleration out of the turns to put up a pretty damn impressive display. I do perhaps personally prefer the RS6 handling slightly to it, but Infiniti, very quick. The Tesla Model S does claim second place. Very, very good showing for the electric car. It's the rather giant weight that kind of lets this car down slightly, weighing almost 5,000 pounds. It is a little bit of a handful trying to get it through the corners, and while yes, it is brutally fast, sort of the initial acceleration out of the turn, combine that electrical power with the four-wheel drive, and it launches quicker than anything. It's just that bit too heavy. And the RS6, for example, we saw could launch very, very fast as well if they got it spot on. So, yeah, the Tesla would come in second. The RS6, a damn fine car. This one, really, I was massively impressed with the way that this car drove. The brakes are good, the handling is good. It perhaps doesn't quite have the speed of the Infiniti. It can't quite get out of the corners in the same way that the Infiniti, or perhaps to an extent the Tesla can in racing situations, but launching it off the line, the RS6 is very, very quick. Decent top speed, not going to beat the Hellcat, but still, the RS6, probably one of the biggest surprises to me in this challenge, just how good the car was. The Hellcat was very much as you would kind of expect it to be, monumentally fast in a straight line. Road Atlanta was passing everything down the back straight, but an absolute handful through the corners. He gets beaten by the Mercedes. Mercedes just that much better through the corners. The Hellcat is crazy. I would have the Hellcat out of all of these just because of the pure craziness, but it is a handful through the corners, and the rear diff is horrendous. Absolutely god-awful. The biggest surprise, though, of the lot has to go to the Chevy Supersport. Considering it's so far down on power to the cars around it, it's almost 150 horsepower down on the XF RS, yet it gets from 0 to 100 quicker than the Jag. That's really rather impressive showing from the Chevy. It's actually quite close call between the Chevy and the M5 for being kind of surprised. The M5 is lower PI than a lot of the fastest cars, and it was holding on quite well to the likes of the Tesla and my Hellcat for a little while at Road. The M5, fantastic handling car, no doubt about that, but was just a little bit outclassed by some of the other vehicles. The Chevy Supersport, though, really did punch very well above its weight. I mean, beating the ISF is damn good going from this vehicle. If this had the kind of power that you got in the Hellcat, it would probably be the fastest car here. Unfortunately, it does not. But yeah, there we go. That is it for this showdown. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.